Welcome Unity programmers to this new lesson. In this lesson we will cover the following topics. We start with the introduction, that's what we're doing now. Then I'm going to introduce you to the concept of a prefab. Then I will show how you can adjust a prefab in Prefab-Mode. And I'll show you how to spawn a prefab in your scene using a script. Next, I show a method how to spawn multiple prefabs in your scene after a couple of seconds. Finally, I close with the outro. This was the intro. Let's quickly start the lesson. If we want to learn how to make multiple meteors fall on Earth, I must first introduce the prefab. Prefabs are reusable game object assets that allow you to place multiple copies of the same object in your game and manage them all from one place. It's easiest to explain when I show it. First, I make 2 copies of the meteor. We distribute the 2 copies across the scene. Now we have 3 enemies. If we want to make a change, we have to do this separately for each enemy. Suppose we want to add a material to the enemy. We first create a separate folder for the materials. In this folder we create a new material called meteor. We give this material a dirty brown color. I think a real meteor color. If we now want to apply this color to each meteor, we must do this separately for each meteor. 3 is still doable. But suppose you have 200 meteors in your scene. Before I show an alternative way to change this, we first need to delete the 2 copies and apply the default material to the original meteor. You can apply the default material under the Mesh Renderers Materials tab. Click on the circle with the dot and select Default Material. To stay organized, we first create a new folder called Prefabs. To create a prefab of the meteor, we just need to drag it from the hierarchy to the Prefabs folder. If successful, a blue icon will appear for the meteor in the hierarchy. If we want to make copies, we can now drag the prefab into the scene. If we want to apply a material to all copies, we can enter Prefab-Mode by double-clicking on it. This will take you to what looks like an empty scene, with only the prefab object inside of it. In Prefab-Mode we can make changes to our prefab. If autosave is checked, changes that are made will be applied to all of the prefab's instances. Now we can apply the meteor material to the prefab. For this we drag the material onto the prefab. We close Prefab-Mode by pressing the arrow in the hierarchy. Now all instances of the meteor are provided with the meteor material. In our current setup, the meteor is launched in the start method of the enemy movement script. But actually this is more of a task for the game manager script. The game manager is responsible for the different game states. Let's open the game manager and adjust this using the meteor prefab we created. We first create a public game object called enemy. We can connect the meteor prefab to this variable later in the editor. Then we create a new function called spawnEnemy. We use the Instantiate function in this spawnEnemy function. Instantiate in Unity is a function of the object class that allows you to spawn new objects in our scene. If you want to use Instantiate, start with the keyword Instantiate followed by parentheses. Between the parentheses, enter the name of the object you want to spawn. By default, an instantiated object inherits the position and rotation of the object it's cloned from. It's possible to choose where an object is created by passing in its position and rotation data manually. You can insert a new vector 3 with the desired location. For the rotation, I use the rotation of the game object itself. We have already found a way in the enemy movement script to make the meteor appear at the top of the screen at a random location on the x-axis. Let's cut and paste this code. We can use the calculated random position of the meteor in the instantiate function instead of 0 on all axes. Now just call the function in the start method. And don't forget to save the scripts. And we can go back to the Unity editor. Drag the prefab to the enemy variable field of the game manager. We are going to spawn the enemy, so we can remove the prefabs already present in the scene. Now if we go to play mode, we will see the meteor appear at the top of the screen in random locations, a different location each time we restart the game. We have now found a way to have the meteor spawn in a different location each time. But for this we have to restart the game every time. We actually want multiple meteors to come down over time during a single game. Let's see what we can do about this. Let's reopen the game manager. We call the spawn enemy function in the start method. This is only called once when loading the game manager. Should we perhaps call the spawn enemy in the update method? Let's comment out the spawn enemy call in the start method and call it in the update method. What effect will this have when we test this in play mode? It's a very cool effect, but a bit too much. A meteor is spawned every frame. There must be some time between each spawned meteor. Let's retry and open the game manager. We create a new function that we call create prefab. We first add a float variable called timer. We give this the value 2. In the function, we subtract the time between each frame from the variable timer. We do this using timer minus equals time.delta time. We use an if statement to check when the value of the timer is less than or equal to 0. Between the brackets, we call our spawn enemy function. And we reset the timer by giving it the value 2 again. Instead of calling the spawn enemy in the update method, we call the create prefab function. Now after 2 seconds, the first meteor should fall, and then again after 2 seconds, and so on. Isn't it wonderful? Thanks for watching. In the next lesson, I'll show alternative for our create prefab function, and we'll try to give our player the ability to shoot. Please like and subscribe, so you'll get notified if a new video is uploaded. More people will get this video in their search result. when they want to learn Unity game development.